You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Corday, and really delighted to welcome to the show cultural powerhouse April Rain. She is here with us. We'll be joined with Michael Huggins momentarily. Both attorneys from Capitol Hill to Los Angeles. Really not just in their cultural bag, but they have their finger on the pulse. They keep their finger on the pulse of what is afoot on and offline. And we love to get a pulse check from them. Welcome to the show, April.
Thank you. Very happy to be back.
Well, happy to have you here. We're going to start with this story as published by our friends at the Grio. Which I find fascinating and maybe a little heartbreaking at the same time. The Grio's reporting on this complicated dynamic that's playing out around the World Cup and the South African team. I was just sharing a little bit about that at the top of the show. Here's the tension for people who are a little less familiar. Some Africans, particularly from other African nations, are not rooting for South Africa in this tournament. And the reason is immigration. South Africa has faced significant criticism for its treatment of migrants from other African countries, including deportation policies and what many describe as xenophobic attitudes. And some Africans are watching this World Cup and finding themselves unable to cheer for a team that represents a country whose policies have harmed their communities. This is rich. It's complicated. This is the intersection of Pan-Africanism, national identity, immigration policy, and sports. And I don't think that there's a simple answer here. April, you think deeply about representation and belonging. What do you make of this?
All skin folk ain't kinfolk, number one. Let's start there.
Oh, really?
And number two, which South Africans are we talking about? Because it's my understanding that the majority of folks who are being admitted into the U.S. with visas are white South Africans, right? And so it seems a little hypocritical that the country of South Africa is being very shady with respect to who they allow in their country or not, and yet there seems to be no problem for white South Africans to enter, or it's much easier for white South Africans to enter this country, right? So, I think rooting for teams is incredibly hard. I watched the Knicks win Game 4 last night. I have never lived in New York, and yet I am a New York fan. I can't say that I'm actually a Knicks fan, to be very transparent. So I think it really depends on what the representation looks like and what the guide rails are to allow folks into the country. What are you requiring, and why are you being more strict with respect to one country than another?
Yeah. I mean, your point taken. Michael, I want to bring you into this conversation around other Africans not rooting for South Africa in this World Cup. April says simply not all skin folk or kinfolk. What say you?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on tonight. I think when it comes to the World Cup, obviously there's a lot happening right now. This is a chance for a lot of people to express their feelings. I think not just in the United States, but globally. I think you're seeing a lot of frustrations with those who are holding power, and people are using the World Cup right now in order to exercise their voice. So I think I very much concur with what April is saying. I think if there is a platform for you to use, if you have some opposition, if there's something that you feel about a particular country that's in the World Cup, you have every right to express that.
Yeah, and just as a follow up, Michael, I want to ask you, because look, you've spent a lot of time thinking about how we navigate these kind of intra-community tensions.
Mhm.
Is there a way to honor the critique of South Africa's immigration policies and celebrate the beauty and significance of an African team on the world stage?
That is also a really good question. I mean, I think ultimately this is the dilemma when it comes to some of these world events. You know, I was just reading or watching a video about the U.S. men's soccer team, football team, I guess, and everyone is. There are a lot of folks who are like, to what extent can we separate what's going on with the United States from the players who have obviously worked very hard, and these folks have been training their entire lives for this one moment. And so I think there is space to honor some of those folks, but um, I think a lot of this it doesn't have to be black and white. It can be gray. Yeah, I may not necessarily agree with a particular country's politics, but I may very well support some of those athletes because I know that they're working hard. And there might be some case where where I'm not supporting the athletes because I may not particularly. I may not be a complete fan of, well, I may be a complete fan of football and may want to express it in other ways. So all that to say is, I think there's a lot of gray here, and I think there's a lot of wiggle room for folks to be able to root for the team that they want, while also expressing their political views.
I mean, so should we expect a lot more of this sort of tension, especially given that the Olympics is right around the corner, right? And
Mhm.
so if folks are carrying on this way related to the World Cup, fasten your seatbelt for the Olympics. April?
Well, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I think that's exactly right. And it's incredibly hard to separate. We have these conversations all the time, right? Separating the art from the artist. I think it's very similar to talk about how, whether we can separate the sport from, or the politics from the athlete, because we don't know what those athletes are doing, the other 10 months of the year when they're not competing on some of the world's biggest stages. So as we look forward to the Olympics, I think about Israel being in the Olympics, right? We don't know what those athletes do. Are they soldiers? Are they, perpetuating a genocide in Palestine? So what are those questions that we need to ask? And I think it can get very difficult to be able to separate in those ways and say, you know what, I'm just, that shut up and dribble kind of thing, whether
Mhm.
it's on a pitch or if it's on a court, right? It's the same type of thing. And I don't think that one should necessarily separate the artist, the participant, the athlete from what they do in their everyday life and what happens when those big overhead lights go off.
Yeah. So I want to pivot to another story that caught my attention. It might have caught yours. Something happening right here at home that I really need everybody to know about because it's infuriating and it's telling and it's a pattern that we have seen before. The Iowa Supreme Court has blocked an effort to redirect a scholarship it was specifically created for Black science students, the Totten Scholarship. This scholarship was established to support Black students pursuing STEM fields, an area where Black students remain chronically underrepresented. And some tried to redirect it. And guess what? The Iowa Supreme Court said, no, no, you can't just take this away. April, in this era of DEI rollbacks, of attacks on race conscious programs, of people using neutrality as a weapon against equity, what does this ruling mean? And why does it matter that a court actually drew this line?
I think it means that there is a glimmer of hope. We know that these scholarships and other ways to there are other ways that we bring people forward, right? That we sort of attempt to ameliorate the harm that has been done. And we're talking about with marginalized communities, when we're talking about under-resourced communities. And so for the Supreme Court of the state to say, no, this actually makes sense, is fantastic. Now, one questions whether that will stick, because we know if it gets appealed and it goes up to the United States Supreme Court, there's no chance that it lasts, right? And so it will get overturned. But, I think we also need to think about, there's always that argument about states' rights, and states should be able to handle their own things. And so this might be an interesting test case for the Supreme Court if it gets that far. But until that time, I'm very happy to hear that the state Supreme Court has made what seems to be the correct decision, because especially now, as you mentioned, with all of the DEI rollbacks, we need spaces for marginalized and under-resourced communities to have a way to find a level playing field, which is all that we've ever asked, an opportunity, not necessarily a leg up, but two firm legs to stand on.
Yeah, Michael, we've seen scholarship programs for Black students under attack across the country. How widespread is this, and what should families and students and community members, what should we all be doing right now to protect these pipelines?
This is very widespread, and it's not just something that is a recent thing. I mean, even going back to when I was a grad student at Harvard about 10 years ago, I was part of the Black student leadership. We had regular conversations with lawyers at Harvard, and I think there is a broad concern, or there was a broad concern, even more so now with the administration that is here, about the use of race as it relates to scholarships. As April said, these programs are so important. If they're not designed to give people a leg up, people are just trying to get on some type of equal footing. For generations, you've had a host of individuals who have not been able to access the GI Bill, who've not been able to access housing, who've not been able to access farmland, who've not been able to access an assortment of resources that so many others have been able to access. And so it shouldn't be confusing why some people have certain privileges and have certain benefits, because their grandparents had access to things that my grandparents did not. I mean, just personally, I am the grandchild of someone who was illiterate, who didn't know how to read. And here I am, having attended Harvard, I've attended Stanford, I'm an attorney. Here on your wonderful program, I wouldn't be here without certain programs being in place, making sure that someone like me was actually able to get into those programs and getting those benefits. So they're so important. But this is a common thing. This is going to be a very big legal issue. It's not just about scholarships. It's about programs in law firms, diversity programs in law firms designed to get law students in. Companies who've spent so much time and effort trying to make sure they're getting the right people from the right parts of the country. All of those things are in flux and in danger.
I mean, April, as I think about this story and, so many other stories that we've read about of, scholarships certainly called into question, because, they are designed to support a certain priority population based on race, based on gender, and one of the questions that I sort of mull over is, well, does intent matter? Right? I mean, intent matters when it comes to, so many things under the law. Does intent matter when it comes to what the will of philanthropists are? If somebody funded a scholarship many moons ago and they're no longer here, and that scholarship was intended for Black students, for Black women, right? How is it right for the courts to say, well, no, you can't do that? Well, that person may not even be around to protest that.
Intent should matter, right? And that should be written. I think philanthropists and other funders should be very careful going forward to put that in the documents, right? And so even if they pass on or they're no longer available to really stand up for what the initial gift was, there should be a way to say, well, this is clear. They're doing this because of XYZ. They're doing this in favor of a particular marginalized or under-resourced community. And so the intent should carry forward regardless of whether the actual funder is still around.
Yeah. I mean, and Michael, if the actual funder is still around, aside from us, taking a second gander at our estate planning to make sure that we are explicit
Mm-hmm.
And thank you for that note, April, that we are explicit in what our intent is.
Mm-hmm.
If we are funding endowments and scholarships and the such, what else can we do? What else can we do? Knowing what's coming, knowing that there's certainly going to be an attempt from folks on the right to try and turn every single scholarship for Black students, for women people, for LGBTQ people. They're going to turn it upside down if they can. What can we do?
I think, and this may not be the answer that folks want to hear, and there's all kinds of complications with it, but we've got to make sure that our universities, that programs, that they are lawyering up. Because unfortunately, right now, the way that our courts are shaping, the way that our courts are shaped, the right is winning this argument. They've managed to turn all of the wonderful ways in which we've been able to get these programs in place, and as you said, they've turned them upside down. Now saying that they're, in many ways, reverse discrimination, that if we want to get rid of discrimination in this country, that we need to stop defining things on the basis of race.
Yeah.
And that's a powerful statement to make. And as long as the courts, the Supreme Court, as long as the federal district courts and the Court of Appeals are being continuously shaped by Trump's nominees who are in the pocket of the Federalist Society, who are his loyalists, we're going to get more of these things. So we really need universities, we really need programs making sure that they are investing in really good lawyers.
That's why I am joining the USC Black Alumni Advisory Council. I'm stepping up my game on my alumni board. I challenge all of our leaders, learners, and listeners to do the same because things don't change themselves. More with Michael Huggins and April Rain when we come forward. You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai, and I'm joined today with April Rain. She's no stranger to A More Perfect Union. In fact, I think she was among our very first guests on the show when we launched. And that was years ago. And now here we are rocking an afternoon drive time. We love it and love her. She, of course, is the founder of the Oscar So White movement. She's a strategic communications professional and senior advisor to the Spill app. And so she's a busy lady. And Michael Huggins, he's an attorney. He's a professor. He's a speaker. And he's got his finger on the pulse of what's afoot, not just in Capitol Hill, but outside the Beltway, as a lobbyist for Color of Change. Welcome to the show, Michael Huggins. All right. And so I want to talk about Mayor Karen Bass, LA Mayor Karen Bass. There's a story in Blavity that caught my attention. Maybe it caught yours. I want to spend some time on this story, obviously because it hits close to home for our leaders, learners, and listeners in LA, but it's a story that's bigger than Karen Bass. It's a story about what we expect from Black leadership in America. I think you both have some opinions on that. Blavity has a piece asking what Karen Bass's reelection fight reveals about expectations for Black leadership. And I want to be careful here because I think this conversation can go sideways real quick, either into uncritical defense or unfair attack. But here's what we know. Karen Bass has made history as the first woman and first Black woman to be elected mayor of Los Angeles. She came in with an extraordinary resume, years in the California legislature, including serving as speaker, years on Capitol Hill in Congress. She chaired the Congressional Black Caucus. She was prepared. And her first term has been difficult in some ways. I think a lot of people would say the Palisades fire had happened while she was in Ghana, and when she promised not to travel abroad, and she cut $17 million from the fire department budget before the fires, and those are all real accountability questions. I don't want to play those small. At the same time, she inherited decades of compounding crises, a $1 billion budget gap, a homeless emergency that predates her by decades, the fires. She didn't start them, right? We're talking about 100-mile-an-hour winds powering these fires, And now we just saw the feds yank funding from LASA today, a move that will directly impact her ability to serve the city's most vulnerable residents. And so, April, when we talk about what we expect from Black leaders, particularly Black women in these seemingly impossible jobs, how do we hold accountability and context at the same time? Is there a fair way to evaluate Mayor Bass without applying a double standard?
I always think that we should compare our Black leaders to mediocre white men who are able to fail upward all the time and get a bazillion chances. We just escaped Spencer Pratt, who is best known for being a villain on The Hill, and another, sort of reality star celebrity with no political experience whatsoever, running for a job that he has absolutely no experience in doing, right? And so we narrowly, by literally 1 percentage point or two, narrowly escaped him being part of the runoff against Karen Bass. So, I think it's incredibly difficult when one inherits the problems that she has in Los Angeles. The unhoused population, the fires, and yes, she cut millions of dollars from the budget, but there's a question about what the actual fire chiefs were doing, and also understanding the fact that there were parts that were aflame that were not her jurisdiction. So, people keep saying, oh, why weren't you here? Why weren't you there? And it's like, literally, that's not part of LA. That's not her jurisdiction. So I think it's going to be, she's now running against Councilwoman Rahman, who looks pretty strong. And, I know I've gotten, I'm sure you all have too, quite a few of my friends were interested in seeing what her candidacy looks like. So I think that Mayor Bass is going to have an uphill battle, in part because like many leaders who sort of, just put their head down and get the job done, they do not tout their accomplishments as much as they should. I think President Joe Biden was, that was a problem for him as well. We don't toot our own horn, and especially as Black women, our whole thing is, okay, we're going to put out this fire, no pun intended, and now let's go, figure out how to put out this next fire and this next fire without taking the time to really sit and have at least other people appreciate what we have done so far. So I think accountability is important. I think context is important, but we need to look at the facts and the figures and not the emotions, especially when we're thinking about something as important as one of the largest cities in the country.
Michael, there's something Blavity's piece touches on that I certainly find really interesting. It's the idea of that Black leaders often inherit broken systems and are then held responsible for those systems in ways that their predecessors weren't. That's what April was just alluding to. Is that what we're seeing here? And is Karen Bass's fight for reelection, is it a referendum on her specifically or on something larger?
I mean, that's sort of the ultimate question. I do think that Mayor Bass is certainly being held to a very difficult standard. She did inherit quite a bit, as you mentioned before. Homelessness has had a high rate of homelessness. There's been a high rate of homelessness in the LA area, and an assortment of other issues, environmental issues that I think have plagued the region for quite some time. She really has a lot of issues that she's got to sort through. But at the same time, and April pointed this out, she really has a messaging problem. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if this is a function of just being on CDC. I love members. I've worked for members of the CDC. I have critiqued members of the CDC. I think oftentimes they often live in their, to be frank, their own dream world. And this is the time where she is not in that dream world. She must be held accountable for some of the things that she is doing. I do agree that certainly, yes, the being in Ghana part certainly looked bad, but to voters, you've got to be held accountable for that. And I don't know if she has really been accustomed to being held accountable in that regard on Capitol Hill. But she's she's got a lot of work that she has to do. I think one of the things that she needs to do is she has to do this much better. She has got to get better about being her strongest advocate. I mean, you see Mayor Mondani every time he, gets snow out of a driveway, he's putting that on Instagram. That's what you have to do. And she's not doing that. And so I really wish that this is a wake up call to her. Yes, it is harder for Black women to run for office, and we know this. We can have a whole conversation about Vice President Kamala Harris and her campaign. But if she wants this job, if she wants to keep working as the mayor, she's got to switch it up, because right now what she's doing is not working.
Well, I think some would argue the fact she was a top vote getter in this last election, they would say, well, something's working. But I take your point that I think there's an opportunity.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but her numbers, she got less than 40% of the vote. So yes, something is working, but not enough, because we are only having this conversation because she couldn't get 51% of the vote. And and 15% off of 50, after 51% is quite a big number. And because we saw Raman coming on strong, I really do think she has an uphill battle. Sorry.
No.
And to your point,
that's fair.
And to your point, Spencer Pratt almost got in this runoff. This is a failed reality show star from the hills.
Not even like a top show, like a Survivor or a The Hill. I had to go look it up. The Hills.
Well, I actually really like The Hills, but shout out to some of the other characters. But he was not a primary character. I mean, there is a scene where Lauren Conrad's like, "I do not."
Wait a minute. He was not the star of The Hills?
He was. I would not say he was. He got onto that show because he got into a relationship with Heidi, who was already on the show. He is not one of the primary folks. It was always some of the folks coming in from Laguna Beach that were driving it. So.
We got work to do. A secondary character or a tertiary character on a hit reality show.
Characters on that
almost
show.
making it in the top 2 in LA.
That says, to April's point, that says a lot about Mayor Bass, and that she's got a lot of work to do. And it really is a shame, because I think she's actually achieved quite a lot, and I think she has a statesmanship about her, and I think all of the years of experience, her passion for California, her passion for politics, we need public servants like her, but I want Mayor Mondani to give her some lessons on messaging.
And I want her to return to her roots. A lot of people don't realize she started as a community activist and organizer. And that's what we need right now when we're talking about the unhoused populations, and all of the things that are going on in our daily lives. She actually likes going out to Skid Row and other areas and talking to folks, who are in jeopardy right now. And the camera should be following her. It needs to be throw everything against the wall and make it happen right now, because you've got someone who does have experience, who is, 25 to 30 years younger, who, can be out there and say the difficult things on her heels. So, it's really going to be, and she's getting the support, of folks who may have been with Mayor Bass the first term, but now they're looking for something new and something more, as Michael said, someone more closer to the Mamdani model. So, I wish Mayor Bass the best, but I agree that her messaging needs to change, and quickly.
Well, we shall see. And, we look forward to having so many more of these conversations on air. Mayor Bass is no stranger to a more perfect union. And Nithya Raman, open invitation for Nithya to come join us on air. I would love to be in conversation with her to better understand her vision for Los Angeles, right? Because I don't quite understand it, and I think the other people who may not understand it, but we seek first to understand. You're listening to and streaming a More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward with April Rain and Michael Huggins. All right, it's time for the quiet part out loud, and this installment is pretty delicious. It's all about the great fried chicken debate. Let me explain right here. Because I was thinking, I'm like, okay, are we gonna do the story? We're not gonna do the story, and I'm like, okay, we're on a black talk station. Do we really need to talk about fried chicken? We can have a little bit of fun. This is the final segment of our show today, and we end with really the most pressing question in American civic life: what's the best fried chicken chain in America? The YouGov poll of more than 44,000 Americans collected between March 2025 and February 2026 is officially declared. Wait for it. Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A, number one, at 25.3% of respondents naming that as their favorite. KFC came in second with 17.9%. Popeyes, third at 16.2%. And one of my faves, Raising Cane's, came in fourth at 6.8%. Now, I have opinions, and I want to know what April and Michael think, because here's what I know. In the Black community, this is not a small conversation. Fried chicken is culture, it's memory, it's Sunday afternoons, it's grandmother's kitchen, it's family reunions. And the idea that a national poll has weighed in on this and landed on Chick-fil-A, a company with a complicated history, particularly when
A
it comes to
homophobic history.
LGBT
Let's
rights.
call a thing a thing.
That's right.
A homophobic history.
That's right. And their political giving, we can't forget that either.
Mm-hmm.
I think that raises some questions worth sitting with. April, let me start with you. Where do you land on this? And is there a conscience component to the fried chicken choice in 2026?
Yes, there should be. And first and foremost, let's find out. I need the data. Who was polled? Right?
Demographic.
Do they look like us or do they not? Because that might skew the results, at least for me. And back in the day, before we knew as much as we do about Chick-fil-A, they have a fantastic chicken biscuit. They have great chicken. I don't know that I would rank them above Popeyes, but I also know that Popeyes can be sort of sometimey. It really depends on which Popeyes you go to. Like, I can talk about the one at, what is that, Jefferson and La Brea.
You better tell it. You better tell the people, April.
And Raising Cane's, you only like Raising Cane's because of the sauce. Try to eat that chicken dry and tell me that it's in your top.
It's so true.
Wait a minute.
It's just about the sauce, just like Zaxby's is the same thing. And what was the fourth one at KFC? Come on now, 11 herbs and spices, but they're not put in the pot right. They're not. Somebody's not stirring them correctly. It's
no.
not. And those sides, because I think you can talk about the chicken, but you also have to talk about the sides that come with it, I think. Mm-hmm. So, I'm going to stay at home and fry my own and God bless the child.
God bless the child. Michael?
I think I definitely want to see those demographics. I think Chick-fil-A would certainly not be my choice. Probably Popeyes of those options. Popeyes would be the choice, but it's also very regional. I know tons of folks who like Church's chicken.
Church's chicken, that's some oily chicken.
Well, some people love it. I am still more of a Popeyes fan. Raising Cane, I think that is an overhyped chicken. I don't know why this chicken keeps popping up everywhere. I do want to give a shout out just to KFC in the Caribbean, because KFC in the Caribbean is actually
KFC International.
As someone who is half Caribbean and has gone to KFC in the Caribbean, I was put on game. I was shocked at how good the chicken was. But KFC only belongs in the Caribbean. Otherwise, for me, if I'm going to a chain, it will be Popeyes. Otherwise, I will either be frying my own chicken or I will be eating the chicken in my family.
Well, look, I'm gonna stand by my Raising Cane's and that Texas toast and the French fries. I mean, I just think it's solid. Popeyes, obviously, I love the flavor. Who doesn't love a little Cajun rice from Popeyes? Mm-hmm. Just saying. But look, Chick-fil-A, they make a good sandwich. I'm not gonna lie, but winning a poll, it doesn't mean that you're the best. Sometimes popularity is just familiarity, and sometimes the most important things in the world are a little spicier, a little less mainstream, a little more you. That's a metaphor. You can take it however you need to. April Rain, Michael Huggins, thank you. Thank you for your brilliance, your warmth, your humor, the truth you always bring to the table. You're the kind of people that make this show what it is, and we are grateful for you. To all of our leaders, learners, and listeners, we appreciate you too. We covered a lot. We covered a lot today. We talked about a comeback that reminded us that it's never over until it's over. We talked about prices rising and people struggling. We talked about JD Vance in the Situation Room and what justice looks like for Epstein victims. And we talked about the World Cup opening in our hemisphere. And so be sure to check it out. Check it out. If you're in LA or in other parts of the country, we'll leave it there. My thanks to the entire village that helps us produce a More Perfect Union. Our executive producer, Tavis Smiley, our sound engineer, brother Andy, our show producers, Faraji Muhammad, and Art Sears, and of course, each and every one of you. Remember, don't panic, organize, organize, organize. Do what you can from where you are with what you have, but by all means, do something. Thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend. Bye.